Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We will start with quote of the day. The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Whoever travels a path in search of knowledge, Allah makes easy for him a path to paradise." This is a hadith from Sahih Muslim. I am Dr. Temia Ayub, and today I will be presenting the topic of dynamics of disease transmission under the supervision of Professor Dr. Saira Afzal, Dean, Institute of Public Health, Lahore. So these are the learning objectives of today's presentation. We will start with the natural history of disease and the spectrum of disease, then explain the chain of transmission and what do we mean by it. It includes agent, host, and environment. Differentiate modes of disease transmission, define herd immunity and calculate herd immunity threshold, interpret epidemic curves and classify outbreak types, understand the role of R naught in predicting epidemic potential, and apply transmission concepts to disease prevention and control strategies. In the end, we will be doing multiple choice questions. So now start with the basic concept of natural history of disease. So first there is susceptibility leading to subclinical disease, then clinical disease and resolution of death. The main concept is that the biological onset of disease precedes clinical symptom by a variable period. It depends on the type of disease and so on. The pre-pathogenesis period includes all host, agent, environment interaction before disease. Primary prevention targets the susceptibility stage. Secondary prevention targets subclinical phase. Understanding natural history guides appropriate point of intervention. Okay, so this is a very important concept. I will be showing another diagram in the latest slide and it will be even more clearer. So the concept is that of iceberg of disease. Okay, so why is this concept, the iceberg of disease, is important? Most disease in a community is subclinical and is undetected. Clinical case represent only the tip, a minority of the true burden. Disease registers and routine data underrepresent the true disease frequency. Carriers in subclinical cases sustain transmission silently. Case fatality and morbidity rates based on visible cases are biased. Population screening can detect the submerged portion. For example, in case of COVID-19, it has been said that its transmission was way larger than the number of cases registered because the most of the cases were subclinical, or they were not very much symptomatic, they were not registered, or those people did not get themselves tested, and therefore they did not know about their own status. So those people who develop some kind of symptoms or who develop some kind of complication of the disease or who ended up being dead due to the disease are part of the upper portion, which is the visible part of the iceberg, and the submerged portion includes many different categories like subclinical cases, or those with the risk factor, or those who are in the pre-pathogenesis phase. All these are present in the submerged portion of the iceberg. Okay, so this is another example of an iceberg. In this case, they are showing the iceberg for celiac disease. So as you can see, the upper portion of the iceberg, which we can see above the water, is of the symptomatic celiac disease. But below the water surface, there are many stages, which includes latent celiac disease with normal villi, and then we have silent celiac disease, which the villi have begun to damage, but they are not showing any symptoms yet. So, with this example of the celiac disease, again, the concept of iceberg of disease has been reinforced. Now we come to another important concept in epidemiology, which is that of epidemiological triad, which is agent, host, and environment. So, what is the agent? Agent can be biological, chemical, physical, or nutritional, which are those which are causing the disease. Environment is the physical, social, biological, economical environment which is surrounding both the agent and the host, and which either help in getting the person or the host infected, or which helps them protect them. And then finally, we have the host, which depends on multiple factors like the age of the host, gender, genetics, immunity, behavioral pattern. All these factors are very important in determining whether the host will develop the disease or they will not develop the disease. So, the disease occurs when the balance among these factors is disrupted. So, now we come to agent and the characteristic of the agent. So, first we have the concept of infectivity, which is the ability to invade and establish infection in a host. It is measured by secondary attack rate. Pathogenicity, it is the ability to produce clinical disease in infected host. Pathogenicity is equal to clinical cases divided by infected persons. Then we have virulence, which is the ability to produce severe disease or death. Case fatality rate is a measure of virulence. And finally, we have immunogenicity, which is the ability to stimulate protective immune response in the host. Some other factors which are also important is antigenicity, drug resistance, survival outside host, portal of entry or exit specificity, and so on. Modes of disease transmission. We have direct transmission and we have indirect transmission. With direct contact, a direct transmission is through direct contact like touching, kissing, sexual intercourse, etc. Then we have droplet spread through large respiratory droplet, which are less than 1 micrometer. The area which they spread is less than 1 meter. Then we have transplacental, also known as vertical transmission from mother to fetus. Then we have bloodborne through needle stick or transfusion of blood or blood products. Then we have animal bite in cases of rabies and plague. Indirect transmission is when it is through vehicle borne, contaminated food, water, fomites. Airborne droplet nuclei remain suspended in air and for more than 1 meter, they can disperse. For example, in cases of tuberculosis. Vector borne can be due to mechanical vectors, for example, fly carrying cholera, or can be due to biological vectors, which is the example of mosquito and malaria, or iatrogenic via medical procedures or devices. So, this is a comparison between direct and indirect transmission. Now we come to reservoirs of infection. We have human reservoir, which are symptomatic patients, carriers, healthy, incubatory, convalescent, chronic. For example, typhoid Mary, chronic Salmonella typhi carrier. Then we have animal reservoir, zoonotic diseases, brucellosis in cases of cattle, goats, rabies, a plague with the rodents or mice. Then we have environmental reservoir, soil, which has a reservoir of which can have reservoir of Clostridium tetani, histoplasma. Then water, Legionella, Vibrio cholera, and then air, which can have Aspergillus spores. So the main concept is identifying the reservoir is essential for interrupting transmission and designing control strategies. Carrier state and disease transmission. We have incubatory carrier, which spreads pathogen before clinical symptoms appear. For example, in cases of measles, infectious days are 4 days, include 4 days before the appearance of rash. Then we have convalescent carriers, which continue to shed pathogen during recovery. For example, cholera and typhoid fever. Then we have healthy or contact carrier, which never develops disease but harbors and spread pathogen. For example, in case of poliovirus, 90 to 95% of infections are subclinical. And finally, we have chronic carriers, which are long-term reservoir, may carry for years and or lifetimes. The most important examples can include hepatitis B surface antigen carrier, and also we have heard of typhoid and how typhoid Mary became a chronic carrier and spread typhoid to many people. So, typhoid is another example. Now we come to the concept of portals of entry and exit. So, we have the portal of respiratory portal. The portal of exit is from the source, respiratory secretions, droplet, aerosol in cases of TB, measles, and COVID-19. And the portal of entry to the new host includes inhalation through mouth and nose. Then we have GIT tract, and the portal of exit for this is feces in cases of cholera, typhoid, hepatitis A. And the portal of entry is ingestion, contaminated food or water. Then we have skin mucosa, and the portal of exit for that is skin lesions, exudate in cases of impetigo or syphilis. And the portal of entry is intact or broken skin or mucous membrane. Then we have genitourinary portal with exit as urine, genital secretion, for example, in cases of HIV and gonorrhea, sexual contact, and portal of entry is through sexual contact and mucous membrane. Similarly, for blood, the portal of exit is taking of blood or any blood product, and portal of entry to new host includes transmission through needles, transfusion, and arthropod bites, but it is rare. Then we have placenta and perinatal portal. Portal of exit is from maternal blood, birth canal, and portal of entry to new host of the baby in this case is transplacental or during delivery. Incubation period and generation time. Period is the time from exposure to onset of clinical symptoms. It varies by pathogen, dose, and host immunity. During incubation period, host may already be infectious. Used to set quarantine periods, trace contact, and identify exposure windows. Generation time is the time between infections of primary case and secondary case, different from serial interval, onset to onset, and it is critical for modeling epidemic spread, for example, R naught calculation. Shorter generation time means faster epidemic growth. So now we have examples like for in case of influenza, the incubation period is 1 to 4 days. In case of COVID-19, the time period was 2 to 14 days. Median was about 5 or 7 days. So now we come to the concept of basic reproductive number, which is the R naught. R naught is the average number of secondary cases generated by one infectious case in a fully susceptible population. If R naught is less than 1, each case infects less than 1%, epidemic will die out. If R naught is 1, endemic equilibrium, disease persists at a constant level. If R naught is more than 1, epidemic potential, disease spreads exponentially. Estimated R naught values for selected diseases. For measles, the R naught value is 12 to 18. That's why we know that measles come in epidemics and they are very severe, and all the children or immunocompromised patients can get measles because the R naught value is 12 to 18, which is very high. Then we have polio with R naught value of 5 to 7, and COVID 19, the original variant, had the R naught value of 2 to 3. Now, what is herd immunity? Herd immunity threshold is equal to, this is the formula for calculating herd immunity, 1 minus 1 divided by R naught into 100%. So herd immunity is a proportion of population that must be immune to prevent sustained transmission. Immune individual act as a firewall, protecting susceptible members, for example, infants, immunocompromised individual, from getting disease. It can be achieved through natural infection or vaccination programs. Higher R naught means that higher herd immunity threshold is required. For example, we just saw the example of measles with R naught value of 12 to 18. So for measles, higher herd immunity threshold is required, which is about 94%. And for COVID-19 strain with R naught value less, we need the herd immunity threshold of 60 to 67%. So yes, again, this is the example of measles with R naught of 15 and a herd immunity threshold of about 93% is required. Again, these are examples. We have seen the example of polio with R naught value of 6 and herd immunity threshold required is 83%. Then similarly for COVID-19 and influenza also. So attack rate and secondary attack rate. Attack rate is number of new cases divided by population at risk multiplied by 100. Used specially for outbreaks with defined exposure period, foodborne illness, epidemics. Secondary attack rate is equal to cases among contacts of primary cases divided by total susceptible contacts into 100. It measures infectivity, compares vaccine efficacy within threshold. So this is important uses of secondary attack rate, that is it measures infectivity and vaccine efficacy is measured by secondary attack rate. So now we have applications of attack rate. It identify the food vehicles and foodborne outbreaks, compare attack rate among exposed versus unexposed, estimate infectivity of a pathogen in a closed population, for example, military barracks, schools. It evaluates vaccine effectiveness, for example, compares secondary attack rate in vaccinated versus unvaccinated context, and guide the scope of contact tracing and prophylaxis efforts. Epidemic curves, types, and interpretations. So, common source epidemic, which is the point, also known as point source, single exposure events, rapid rise, sharp peak, and fall within one incubation period. For example, salmonella from a wedding buffet. Then we have common source or continuous intermittent, ongoing or repeated exposure, prolonged plateau or multiple peaks, for example, contaminated water supply. Then we have propagated person to person, sequential waves, each larger, spaced by one incubation period, slow rise, gradual fall, for example, measles and COVID-19. How epidemic curves help investigator. It estimates the likely date and type of exposure event, determine incubation period and thus the likely causative pathogen, assess whether the outbreak is over or ongoing. Now we come to the three very important definitions, which are endemic, epidemic, and pandemic. So, what is endemic? Endemic is the disease present at a relatively constant expected level within a defined geographical area or population. For example, malaria in sub Saharan Africa, typhoid in South Asia, like that. Then we have hyperendemic, persistently higher disease incident exceeding that in surrounding areas. For example, onchocerciasis in river valley communities. And then epidemic, disease occurrence clearly in excess of normal expectancy, maybe sudden outbreak or gradual outbreak. Cholera outbreak post flood, or Ebola outbreak in West Africa 2014. Then we have pandemic, worldwide epidemic affecting large number across multiple countries or continents. For example, influenza in 1918, HIV or AIDS outbreak, and COVID-19 outbreak. And the term outbreak is usually often used for localized or limited epidemics, two or more linked cases from the same exposure. For example, foodborne illness from a particular restaurant. So now there are host factors in disease susceptibility and transmission. As we mentioned, that hosts make up an important part of the epidemiological triad of agent, host, and environment. So now we will see the factors which are responsible or which leads to increase in host susceptibility to disease. So we have age, extremes of age leads to higher susceptibility. For example, neonates or elderly, age influences immunity behavior and exposure pattern. Then we have sex and genders. Biological sex affect immune response. Gender influences occupational or behavioral exposure. Then we have genetic factors like G6PD deficiency in cases of malaria. Nutritional status also influences, like in cases of TB or measles, making individual more susceptible. Immune status almost always affect, for example, for vaccination, passive immunization, and so on. Concurrent disease, comorbidities like diabetes and CKD also alter susceptibility and severity, and behavioral patterns like sexual behavior, drug use, hand hygiene, health seeking, all these affect the host susceptibility. Environmental factors in disease transmission, we have physical environment like climate, temperature, humidity, and so on, which affect vector breeding. Biological environment, presence of vectors like mosquito, ticks, reservoir host, and so on. Then we have social environment, poverty, crowding, conflict, migration, social network. They also amplify transmission and vulnerability. Built environment, in cases of wash infrastructure, clean water, sanitation, and housing quality, they are also very critical. Occupational exposure, for example, for healthcare workers, they are exposed to different types of disease. Farmers and miners, they all face unique occupational hazards. And climate change, due to expanding vector habitats, altered rainfall, and extreme events, they are also important. So where can we break the chain of transmission, leading where, meaning where can intervention be done? So it can be done to eliminate reservoir, for example, eradication program like smallpox, vector control, and rodent elimination for treatment of carriers. Then block portal of exit, isolate infectious case, treat open TB and surgical mask for respiratory condition. Then interrupt transmission through wash and food safety, block and portal of entry through gloves, personal protective equipment, safe injection practices, and so on. And then protect susceptible hosts through vaccination, chemoprophylaxis, nutrition. So these are all the different points of intervention which can be done to break the chain of transmission. So the key takeaways from this lecture presentation are that disease transmission require a susceptible host, a virulent agent, and a permissive environment. Disrupting any link prevents disease. Most disease burden is subclinical, as we saw from the iceberg of the disease phenomena. Carrier states, healthy, incubatory, convalescent, and chronic, sustain transmission silently and require active surveillance. R naught determines epidemic potential. The herd immunity threshold, 1 minus 1 over R naught, guides vaccination targets. Epidemic curve shapes point source versus propagated, guide outbreak investigation and source identification. Host factors like age, genetics, immunity, behavior, and environmental factors are equally critical as agent characteristics. Early intervention through vaccine, wash, isolation of the patient, and vector control targets a specific links in the chain of transmission. So now we come to multiple choice portion of the presentation. A disease has a high secondary rate but low case fatality rate. Which combination of agent characteristic best explains this pattern? High virulence, low infectivity, high infectivity, low virulence, high pathogenicity, high virulence, low infectivity, high pathogenicity, or E, low immunogenicity and high virulence.
B.
C.
It's B. Yes, it's B. So, second MCQ, an outbreak of gastroenteritis occurs among attendees of a wedding. Case arises sharply within 24 hours and decline rapidly thereafter. What is the most likely type of epidemic? Propagated epidemic, continuous common source epidemic, point source epidemic, intermittent common source epidemic, or endemic occurrence?
C.
Yes, it's C. Which of the following best describe the subclinical phase in the natural history of disease? Period after recovery when immunity develops, period before exposure and biological onset, period with pathological changes but no symptoms, period with when complications develop, period of maximum infectivity only.
B.
B.
It's C. It's C, yes. A child infected with measles transmit the virus to other before developing a rash. This is an example of convalescent carrier state, chronic carrier state, healthy carrier state, incubatory carrier state, or mechanical transmission.
D.
Yes, it is incubatory because incubation time period is going on. Which of the following interventions primarily targets the portal of entry in the chain of transmission? Isolation of infectious case, chlorination of water, use of insecticide treated bed net, vaccination campaigns, or use of gloves and PPE. So the interventions which are targeting the portal of entry are option E, use of gloves and PPE. MCQ 6, in a closed population, 10 out of 50 susceptible household contacts develops infection after exposure to an index case. What is the secondary attack rate? 10%, 20%, 25%, 50%, or 80%? So,
B.
Yes, it is B, 20%. A disease with an R naught of 5 would require approximately what level of herd immunity to interrupt translation? 60%, 70%, 75%, 80%, or 90%? This is a difficult.
C.
Yes,
C.
you are close. Yes, it is 80% for my key. From my key, it is 80%. So you were close. An epidemic curve shows successive waves of increasing magnitude, each separated by one incubation period. What does this indicate? Continuous exposure to a contaminated source, point source outbreak, propagated transmission, zoonotic spillover, or environmental reservoir exposure.
C.
Yes, it is C. Which of the following best explain why routine surveillance data underestimates disease burden? Low sensitivity of diagnostic tests, underreporting of deaths only, exclusion of environmental factors, presence of subclinical and carrier states, and high specificity of case definition.
D.
Yes, it is D, presence of subclinical. A malaria control program focuses on eliminating mosquito breeding sites and insecticide spraying. Which component of the epidemiological triad is primarily being targeted? Agent, host, environment, reservoir, or portal of exit?
D.
Yes.
C.
Basically, I think both can be correct because they are targeting the reservoir in the environment. So this was kind of tricky. So I think both are correct, C and D. Both. This is the YouTube link where this video will be uploaded, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Temia.
you
It was
so
a
much.